Now on BBC Two, investigating so-called extraordinary rendition.
A rundown airport, a hidden spy base, a million blind eyes. The perfect setting for a dirty secret. In 2002, in the backwoods of eastern Poland, an old military airbase threw off its Cold War past and went into business with a mystery new client. Nameless, rich, and with extraordinary demands.
There was a phone call, confirmed by a fax, that a plane with specified numbers would land, and that the airport had to accept this plane for landing. The airport was closed at the time. It was unprepared and we were not accepting any aircraft. I said it's impossible, and then I was told we had to accept the plane. If we refused, heads would roll.
The airport director was told to stay away.
Między tymi lampami to gdzieś może tam widać, zobaczyliśmy z uwagi na to, że był zmierzch, lądowanie.
The rules were thrown out. No customs control, no airport staff near the plane, no one to see who was getting on or off. The plane stopped with its door on the far side.
The border guards came. Then other cars drove to the plane. I'd say minivans. They had tinted windows.
The minivans drove off. No one saw inside, not even the stranger.
There was a woman from the American embassy there during one of these landings. She stood outside. The number plates were from the military base in Kekute.
Ah yes, that old military base 12 miles away. How times change. The old Soviet spy masters are gone. Today America's the godfather, and Poland knows the meaning of omerta, keeping silent about crimes. Beyond the lake, into the trees on the other side, is a restricted area used by the Polish intelligence services. We can't go there. Two fences, barbed wire, and inside, according to some sources, there's a hut or a building where only US CIA personnel are allowed to go. Cameras everywhere. I'm sure I'm being picked up as I walk along here. Whatever's in there's a very big secret indeed. 5 minutes it took to be stopped by a man with a gun. Po prostu patrzę. Można? Nie można? Ale ja jestem na drodze. Aha, to muszę tu, tak? Na asfalcie. Dobrze. Jestem dziennikarką. 9 planes in and out of this godforsaken airport, and one which kept coming back. A Gulfstream number N379P, registered to a firm in Massachusetts. This was a busy little plane, and not just in Poland. Earlier that year, the same Gulfstream had flown from Pakistan to Morocco. Shackled on board, a young Muslim from North London. These were the months after the terrorist attack of 9/11. The world was in shock. A new fanatical enemy, Al-Qaeda, was out to destroy the land of the free. You were either with them or against them. But how to tell truth from fiction?
America's stopped an Al-Qaeda plot to explode a radioactive device.
We have captured a known terrorist who was exploring a plan to build and explode a radiological dispersion device, or dirty bomb, in the United States.
Actually, Jose Padilla, the man they called the Dirty Bomber, was not a known terrorist. But he was a gangster, and he had converted to Islam. That was enough. The alert went out for Padilla's co-plotters.
Padilla's where he needs to be. The coalition we put together has hauled in over 2,400 people. There's just a full-scale manhunt on.
The dragnet reached Karachi in Pakistan, where a British resident from North London was about to fly home. Britain had been Binyam Mohammed's home for 7 years after his family had fled Ethiopia's civil war. He lived in Kensal Rise, went to college and joined a sports club, until, tired of waiting for asylum and a British passport, he borrowed a friend's, his first mistake. And then went to Pakistan and Afghanistan to learn about Islam. That was his second. In Karachi airport he was arrested. His older brother's a doctor in the US. He won't show his face. Links with an Al-Qaeda suspect are too risky. One day he says the FBI came to him and asked, did he or his brother Binyam know the dirty bomber Padilla?
They show me a picture of Jose Padilla. If I know him, and he's a bad guy. I said I'm definitely sure he doesn't, and I don't think he knows who Jose Padilla is.
But baby brother Binyam Mohammed was now a terrorist suspect. He'd been to Afghanistan, and in 2002 that, with his borrowed passport, was enough to tip him through to the dark side, a world with no law and no rights. Binyam's account, shown to me by his doctor brother, tells how interrogators tried to coach him to frame Jose Padilla. It's read by an actor.
They want me to testify in court. They have no witness. And they have told me they're preparing me and others for their use, and giving us information on the accused, which we know nothing of. One of the names is Jose Padilla.
When Binyam refused, he says he was hooded, shackled and put on a plane. This was his first extraordinary rendition. That's CIA speak for flying a prisoner with no legal process to be interrogated more effectively abroad, using torture. For that, Morocco is notorious. Clive Stafford Smith is his lawyer.
He was taken by the Americans to Morocco, and he was taken there for a purpose, and he's not Moroccan, so there's only one purpose, and that's for him to go through a little bit of extraordinary interrogation.
The Gulf Stream took Binyam on his first rendition to Tamara prison. One day he says a woman claiming to be Canadian came in.
I'm giving you a last chance to think about cooperating with the US, said Sarah. If you don't talk to me, then the Americans are getting ready to carry out a torture. They're going to electrocute you, beat you, and rape you. That night they came in and cuffed my hands behind my back. 3 men came in with black masks that only showed their eyes. It was then that the circle of torture began. They cut off my clothes with some kind of doctor's scalpel. I was totally naked. One of them took my penis in his hand and began to make cuts. They must have done this 20, 30 times maybe in 2 hours.
18 months of this and other torture, he says, brought him to breaking point.
They kept reading out to me and saying if I could say this story as we read it, you will just go to court and all this torture will stop. I could not take any more of this torture, and I eventually repeated what was read out to me. They told me to say that I had been with bin Laden 5 or 6 times. Of course, that was false. They told me to say I had told bin Laden about places that should be attacked. That was false too. They told me to say I had sat with Osama bin Laden's top people. That was a lie too.
All this comes from notes made by Binyam in Guantanamo, where he's now held. He could, of course, have made the whole thing up. What makes you convinced that he's telling the truth?
The reason I'm convinced by Binyam about the torture he's gone through is things I've seen. I've seen marks on him that I believe are probably proof of what he went through. And I don't pretend to be omniscient, but I would be extraordinarily surprised if Binyam wasn't telling the truth about his torture.
And then there were the flights.
Binyam has told me the exact date that he flew from Pakistan to Morocco. After I'd written that down, got it unclassified so it's on paper, then I get to cross-check that against the physical logs of those CIA flights, and bang, it's right on.
Flight logs. Physical proof too that the Polish airstrip landings were CIA flights. The same Gulfstream which flew Binyam to Morocco, the N379P, flew here, secretly, and not once, but repeatedly. It's the first time these flight logs have been filmed.
Książka ruchowa dotycząca lotów 2003 rok Gulfstream N379P. Gulfstream N379P. Gulfstream N379P. Gulfstream N379P.
But the Gulfstream wasn't the CIA's only rendition plane to land in Poland.
Gulfstream. Gulfstream.
There was a Boeing.
Nie, to jest Boeing. 22 wrzesień? Jest. O, i tu jest skąd?
Dobrze. Skąd?
Kabul.
Kabul.
Tak.
After the Gulfstreams, the Boeing N313P, apparently carrying businessmen from Afghanistan.
I raz nas poinformowano, że 22 września będzie miało miejsce lądowanie.
On the 22nd of September, a Boeing 737 was to land.
I no, ja miałam duże
I had serious doubts about it, because the airport was unprepared to accept this type of plane.
Tego typu statków powietrznych, bo to jest duży statek.
Somehow it managed to land.
Podjeżdżały właśnie te samochody z tymi przyciemnionymi.
Then these cars with tinted windows approached, and then the plane took off.
I tak się właśnie kończyło to.
So who were they behind those tinted windows that September 2003? No one talked then of the secret CIA prisons in Poland.
W ogóle do głowy nikomu nie przyszło, że może tutaj chodzić o...
It didn't occur to anyone that it might have something to do with transporting prisoners.
Przede wszystkim, że to mogło być możliwe, bo to odbywało się...
Now I think that may have been possible.
Że niemożliwe było, żeby ktoś widział. Potem
All the rigmarole surrounding the flights.
Tą całą oprawę tych operacji...
The fact that we couldn't see what was happening. That the planes just had to be accepted for landing.
Że te statki powietrzne trzeba było przyjąć.
To me it now seems likely.
To wydaje mi się to prawdopodobne.
That same Boeing would soon fly Binyam Mohammed, the young Muslim asylum seeker from Kensal Rise, on his second rendition from Morocco to Kabul in Afghanistan.
It was January 21st or 22nd, 2004. About 10 p.m., I heard a plane. There were 5 US soldiers in black and grey, with face masks. They did not talk to me. They cut off my clothes. There was a white female with glasses. One of the soldiers held my penis, and she took digital pictures. She was one of the few Americans who ever showed me any sympathy. When she saw the injuries I had, she gasped, and she said, "Oh my God, look at that."
The sympathy was short-lived. Binyam was left to face new tortures. And the Boeing took off again, this time to a tranquil Spanish seaside resort. With Binyam delivered, it was time for the CIA rendition crew to pack their masks and black working clothes away and relax in a luxury hotel. The Marriott's records show they used the spa, had a massage, ordered shrimp cocktail and Baileys, incognito, anonymous, undisturbed. But there's no rest for the wicked. The very next day they were off again for another rendition nearby, but not before their strange Boeing was snapped by local plane spotters.
The plane looked like a business plane, so I took a picture of it because I'd never seen a plane like that in Palma before.
Had he not spotted the Boeing in the few hours before it left, the story of the CIA's flights might never have come out. He put his Boeing picture on the web and soon got a call.
German TV got in touch with me and told me that they had this incredible story about a person who says he was kidnapped in this plane and tortured and held for 6 months in Kabul.
This is the man with the incredible tale, now back home in Germany.
My name is Khalid Al-Masri. Since 1994, I've been a German citizen.
And this was the Khalid Al-Masri found wandering in Albania in May 2004, after he'd been to hell and back. Kidnapped, flown to Kabul, and 6 months later dumped by the CIA in an Albanian forest.
They pulled me off the bus, took off my blindfold, and uncuffed my hands. Then they said, "Don't look behind you." I saw this path in the wood. It was lonely and dark. I thought, they'll let me take a few steps and then they'll shoot me in the back.
He saw a man and begged for help.
I told him I'd been abducted by the CIA and that they'd taken me to Afghanistan. He started to laugh and told me not to tell anyone this, as people would make fun of me.
The CIA had met their match. The world's most powerful intelligence agency rumbled by the humble plane spotter and a German TV crew.
They didn't believe him and thought he just wanted to become famous and get on television. And they said my picture could be the proof that he was telling the truth.
It proved just that. Khalid Al-Masri's story was incredible, but the dates squared. In December 2003, 3 weeks before the Boeing showed up in Mallorca, this German car dealer was pulled off a bus on the Macedonian border and arrested. Khalid Al-Masri, who had no history of crime or terrorism, was imprisoned in Macedonia's capital Skopje in this hotel, on no charge, refused a lawyer or consular help or a phone call home, and told if he confessed he was Al-Qaeda he could go. He refused. After 3 weeks he was taken to the airport where the Boeing crew were waiting, fresh from Mallorca, and this German citizen was handed to the CIA.
They told me I would be taken to another room and given a medical examination. I was taken inside. The door was closed and then blows rained down on me from all sides. They ripped off my clothes with a sharp implement. Then I heard them taking photographs.
Ich hörte auch in dieser Zeit, dass sie Fotos geschossen haben. Als die mir die Augen ganz kurz frei gemacht haben.
When the blindfold was briefly removed from my eyes, I saw about 6, 7 or 8 people in that room.
6, 7, 8 Leute sehen.
They were all wearing masks and black clothes, and none of them said a word.
Und kein einziges Ton hatten die gesagt.
How badly were you physically mistreated in the medical examination?
Ich wurde gedemütigt.
I was humiliated,
Erniedrigt.
degraded. I don't want to talk about it. The German police have it all on file.
Bei der deutschen Polizei.
His statement says one of them forced a blunt instrument into his rectum. Somewhere in the classified vaults of the CIA, with these other state secrets, a photographic record of German Khalid el-Masri's and British resident Binyam Mohammed's ordeals may also be gathering dust. Without his pictures, the brutality Khalid el-Masri alleges is hard to verify. But everything else checks out. Skopje's air traffic control records confirm the Boeing tail number N313P was there that day, fresh from Mallorca with its crew.
Und als sie mich in ein Flugzeug reingebracht haben, haben die mich auf den Boden geworfen.
Once inside the plane, I was thrown to the floor and shackled, both to the floor and sides of the plane.
An dem Boden und an der Seiten von dem Flugzeug.
At one point, I was given an injection, and I was gone.
Dann war ich weg.
Within 2 days, the Boeing crew had rendered British resident Binyam Mohammed and German Khalid el-Masri on the same Boeing to Afghanistan, where coalition special forces, allies in the war on terror, were already a law unto themselves and had established their own special fiefdom.
Der hat mir gesagt, ich befinde mich hier in einem.
They told me I was in a country where there are no laws. And did I realize what that meant? They could bury me or keep me in this prison for 20 years, and nobody on earth would ever know.
In diesem Gefängnis stecken, niemand weiß von mir was.
Khalid el-Masri's interrogators knew plenty about him, his bank account in Germany, his car deals, and his contacts at the local mosque. He might still be there, but for the German official who one day came to question him and said he'd soon be free. He called himself Sam. And where was it that you saw this man called Sam?
Das ist der Vernehmungsraum. Hier ist ein Tisch.
In the interrogation room.
Und hier ist ein.
A chair there, another chair there.
Und hier auch.
A table.
Und
Sam sat there.
Khalid el-Masri's release after 6 months in Kabul was as sudden and bizarre as his capture. But no one was laughing now. Within a year, Mallorca's El Diario splashed their scoop.
We said CIA uses Mallorca as a base for kidnappings by plane. We had located the picture of the plane in Mallorca. We had already the official data confirming that this plane had landed in Mallorca and taken off from Mallorca. These are the two lists of the passengers of the Boeing. They stayed here one night, and then they went to Skopje to kidnap or to make the rendition of Khalid el-Masri.
The CIA crew, relaxing in Mallorca, had been careless, registered real names, or phoned home on landlines. Was ex-army medic Lyle Edward Lumsden involved in Khalid el-Masri's so-called medical examination? He won't say, and for now, that secret's safe. US courts have ruled the German car dealer's rendition classified, a matter of national security, granting his attackers impunity. The secret was out. The CIA, it was rumoured, was outsourcing torture, sending al-Qaeda suspects for interrogation to black sites or secret foreign jails. Europe became alarmed. Rendition is illegal. They appointed a rapporteur who studied 17 cases.
In all the cases, the technique is the same. People are kidnapped, taken to an airport, their clothes are taken away, they're tied in a particular way, and they are given tranquilizers. The people who do it to them are all wearing black clothes in a certain style. They don't talk. So obviously there is a methodology, which incidentally the US has never denied. Ce qui n'a jamais été nié par les États-Unis.
The internet was buzzing. European plane spotters began amassing more evidence. A unique photo album. The CIA rendition fleet.
We all got in touch via email with bits of information from here and there to uncover the list of CIA secret aeroplanes and where they were landing. So as soon as someone spotted one here, or in Barcelona or Glasgow, we would pass it on straight away. So very soon these secret planes could hardly move in Europe without us knowing.
CIA headquarters, Langley, Virginia. The truth shall make you free, the motto says. There were some who took it to heart and started to leak. To human rights organizations, to journalists. The Washington Post got there first, but they didn't publish everything their CIA deep throat told them.
The Washington Post talked about secret detention centers without saying which countries they were in. But the Post confirms that they knew then it was Poland and Romania, and they knew that from sources different to those which Human Rights Watch had, but which were also in the US administration. And the Washington Post decided not to announce that it was Poland and Romania after an intervention from the White House.
The Washington Post confirmed to us they kept the secret. They agreed not to name the European countries with CIA prisons, and they say they never have. Not so America's ABC News.
We have an exclusive report tonight about secret prisons in the war on terror. For years now, the Bush administration has refused to talk about what it's doing with the senior al-Qaeda leaders it has captured.
Current and former intelligence officers tell ABC News these 8 top al-Qaeda figures and 3 more were all held at one point on a former Soviet airbase in Eastern Europe. Human rights groups have identified Poland and this military airbase as one of the places involved. Something denied today by the Polish defense minister who was in Washington.
The president of Poland has said that there is no truth to these reports.
Do you accept that, sir?
Of course, he's my president.
To this day, Poland denies it.
Poland has chosen its line. It's sticking to it and is, in the process, damned.
Support for the United States was wearing thin. The war on terror hadn't stopped the bombs in Spain, Bali, London. Dishonor, shame, disgrace, mayhem in Iraq left CIA insiders worried that America had squandered the world's sympathy after 9/11 and was making itself the world's most hated nation. And now, rendition. Watching from his office in Berlin was the head of the CIA in Europe.
That's not the main reason I left the agency, but it's one of the reasons I left. I just felt that we have put our allies in a very difficult position.
US Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice was sent to keep Europe's troublesome democracies on side and remind them, in case they'd forgotten, to be afraid.
Renditions take terrorists out of action and save lives. We share intelligence that has helped protect European countries from attack, helping save European lives. So now, before the next attack, we should all consider the hard choices that democratic governments must face. And we can all best meet this danger if we work together.
Like many who leave the CIA, Tyler Drumheller has written a book. But the interesting stuff, 80 pages of it, has been cut, censored by his former bosses, the CIA. Did you know of the secret prisons?
I can't comment on that.
But I'm not asking you to tell me where they were
No, I
or
can't
if
comment
they
on
existed.
that. I mean, it's...
In Europe?
That I don't know.
You really...
I mean, I can't say. I don't, and I really, I don't know. And
you don't know or you can't say?
I can't say. Yeah.
So you do know?
Hold on. Sorry.
By September 2006, the White House was forced to admit key al-Qaeda suspects had been held in secret prisons abroad. But where? The president still wouldn't say.
A small number of suspected terrorist leaders and operatives captured during the war have been held and questioned outside the United States in a separate program operated by the Central Intelligence Agency. Many specifics of this program, including where these detainees have been held and the details of their confinement, cannot be divulged.
They were, he said, the worst of the worst. 14 notorious al-Qaeda terrorists, among them the architect of 9/11, Osama bin Laden's closest aide, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, or KSM.
During questioning, KSM told us about another al-Qaeda operative he knew was in CIA custody, a terrorist named Majid Khan.
Who? Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was a household name. But who was Majid Khan? It was a shock to Mahmoud Khan in Baltimore to hear the name on the president's lips. There in the company of the worst was his little brother Majid.
He was a very fun-going young teenager. We had all the friends, had everything that teenagers do, liked cars, music, clean, very, very clean record. Did not even get a single traffic violation than anything else. Very excellent student. He actually worked for the state of Maryland with high clearance. So he was giving a full check.
Majid Khan, the A student from Baltimore, had been missing since 2003. Just married, he'd gone to Pakistan to visit his wife. Early one morning, neighbors said, unidentified men came to the house.
Instead of asking any questions, they started hooding everybody and cuffing everybody, and before you know it, they were all taken away. They all disappeared overnight. We were very, very worried about it, what happened, how it happened, who took them, and we had no information at all.
A terrorist named Majid Khan.
And the next time we heard his name was when the President of the United States, President Bush, was giving details on television about the top 14 detainees that were released from secret prisons of the CIA.
Terrorist or saint, it was now clear that Majid had been held in one of the CIA's secret prisons. But where? Uzbekistan? Morocco? Poland?
Well, I have the letters here in which he tried to explain that what happened to him, and as you see up here is the only point you see, and this is the point after that you see in the end. It says in this letter, I am going to mention some of the things I have been through, and they stop right there where he gets to tell us what happened to him. It is completely censored by the government to the point is unrecognizable.
So we filed a petition for cert.
Innocent or guilty, his little brother Majid would need a lawyer, but she has yet to see her client.
We have not been able to meet with him. We have not been able to communicate with him at all, because it is the position of the United States that even though he has a lawyer, we can't meet with him because he might actually tell us where he was held or what kinds of interrogation tactics were used against him in secret CIA detention. In the United States, the law actually expressly prohibits government officials from classifying information and preventing it from coming to public light in order to protect conduct that may embarrass the government or in order to protect illegal conduct. And in the case of Majid Khan, that's precisely what's happening.
And that's precisely what's exasperating the White House press corps.
What is it that the Uzbekis can do in interrogations that the United States of America can't
Well,
do?
first of all, if you're asking me to talk about specific intelligence matters, you know that I'm not going to do that. But
in general,
our understanding...
what is it that this country, the most advanced in national security matters of any country in the world, cannot accomplish in interrogations that the nation of Uzbekistan can?
Again, you're asking me to get into specific matters, and I'm not going to do that because of the classified nature of our intelligence.
The standard answer, but even the president seemed to choke on it.
Can you explain why you've approved of and expanded the practice of what's called rendition, of transferring individuals out of U.S. custody to countries where human rights groups and your own State Department say torture is common for people in custody?
Post 9/11 world, the United States must make sure we protect our people and our friends from attack.
So, more torture for Binyam Mohammed, the British resident from Kensal Rise, who'd been arrested in Karachi for travelling on his friend's passport after visiting Afghanistan. His brother, the doctor, has his account.
I was transferred to the torture zone, which is different from the reception zone.
His is one of the few detailed testimonies to have come through the wall of censorship in Guantanamo. Binyam Mohammed's account is unequivocal. 2 extraordinary renditions, one to Morocco, one to Afghanistan, with severe psychological and physical torture in both.
After several weeks, they changed to cutting my body with razors and pouring salt solution, which burned like hell. They cut all over my body, including my private parts, saying that it were better just to cut it off, as I would only breed terrorists.
The United States does not permit,
This country does not believe in torture.
tolerate,
We do not condone torture.
or condone torture
We don't believe in torture.
under any circumstances.
We do not torture.
We do believe in protecting ourselves.
Your government has said repeatedly, we do not torture. We do not send people to be tortured.
Right.
That's a lie, isn't it?
I can't comment on it, but I don't. Yeah, it's a tricky. It's not a tricky question. They don't send. They shouldn't send people to be tortured. If they did, it's wrong, and that has to be brought out. And I don't know of any specific case where someone said, send this person there to be tortured.
Tricky question. I don't think so, and nor does Canada.
Canada is launching an official protest against the United States over the Meher Arar case.
Meher Arar, the Syrian-born Canadian arrested in New York 4 years ago, accused of links to terrorism, deported to Syria and tortured, exonerated fully this year after a lengthy inquiry back in Canada.
It's no secret that Meher Arar was tortured in Syria and that he was rendered there from the United States, stopping en route in Rome on Mr. Drumheller's watch.
I cannot begin to tell you how important it is today that the government of Canada and the Prime Minister have acknowledged my innocence. The struggle to clear my name has been long and hard.
Thanks to his wife, Arar was freed. The Canadians acknowledge they gave the CIA false intelligence against him, a blunder now costing their taxpayer 11 million Canadian dollars, a lot considering Canada's minor role.
What I would like to see is obviously the United States government come clean with its version of events, to acknowledge, I would hope to acknowledge the deficiencies and the inappropriate conduct that occurred in this case.
Washington has refused. The day after this landmark payout in Canada, the Americans are treating it as a non-event.
Well, in Canada, it's a big story. It's front-page news in every paper. But here, south of the border, tucked away on page 14.
Far from compensating Meher Arar, the US has banned him from entering America, insisting he's still a terrorist suspect. But they won't say why, on what grounds. That too is classified. So now he's suing them and hopes to make them pay.
Yeah, I don't think the U.S. government will have to pay.
So sending him to Syria, where he was tortured and imprisoned without any kind of explanation for 10 months, Isn't he entitled to some compensation from the US government who did that to him?
No. That's my opinion. That's my opinion.
So?
Yeah.
It was on your watch.
Sure.
You were head of the CIA in Europe.
Right.
The plane landed in Rome.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't know. That's what they say. I can't comment on it.
The world is closing in on the CIA renditions program. Flight logs show planes have landed in 29 different countries. 300 CIA landings in Europe alone. Hard to keep that secret for long, but Europe's governments are still trying, still denying they're involved.
I think the Spanish authorities knew that there were flights from Palma to Guantanamo. Clearly, businessmen don't fly to Guantanamo. I don't suppose the authorities investigated. They just preferred to keep quiet and turn a blind eye to what was going on right under their noses, which was they were kidnapping citizens.
Now, around Europe, there's a power struggle between governments and the law. In Spain, judges are investigating what their government knew. In Italy, 25 CIA agents are wanted for kidnapping, and a former head of military intelligence is in the dock, with the Italian government accused of a cover-up.
I think that what happened in Italy happened in all the other states. There was one or other service in each of the countries involved which collaborated with or without the knowledge of their governments. But the truth is that those governments don't want to know what happened. Because for them, the US is a very important ally. It's an economic power, and many European countries have chosen to put those interests before their values.
In Germany, the car dealer Khaled El-Masri, who was dumped in the Albanian forest after his kidnap to Afghanistan, has now been declared an innocent man by a German parliamentary inquiry. And prosecutors there have issued arrest warrants for the CIA rendition crew who kidnapped and assaulted him after their break in Mallorca. But he's had no help after his ordeal, and he fears he's losing his mind. The German government denies it, but he's convinced they were in league with the CIA.
The German government is really quite strange. They say they are not involved, but I have a lot of questions. I find a lot of things simply incomprehensible.
Like if his government really didn't know he was there, who was the German in his Afghan prison who called himself Sam?
I said, you know who I am, but I don't know you. Are you a German official? He paused, spoke briefly to his American colleague, and then told me he couldn't answer my question. I then asked if German officials knew I was there. He said, I can't answer that question either.
British denials too are unconvincing. The line is, the British government didn't ask, and has no way of finding out, who was aboard the 80 CIA planes which landed in Britain.
I would also like to have clearer information about the role the UK played. But it shouldn't be up to me to shed light on this, as I don't have the power.
But new evidence of Britain's involvement keeps coming out. At least 2 British residents were flown to Guantanamo after a tip-off from British intelligence. And then there's the asylum seeker from Kensal Rise, Binyam Mohammed.
The British government was complicit in some ways in what happened to Binyam.
Binyam Mohammed, the student from Kensal Rise, rendered twice by the CIA after British agents questioned him in Pakistan. But that would never have come out without the efforts of Clive Stafford Smith.
Binyam was visited by British intelligence officers in Pakistan. Two people talked to him. They told him, at one point they told him to put more sugar in his tea because where he was going, in the Middle East, he was going to need it. And if Binyam has told the truth, and I believe he has, then that means the British government officially knew he was going to be tortured and did nothing to stop it.
He says his interrogators in Morocco and Afghanistan knew everything about his life in London, his girlfriend, his kickboxing club, his friends at the mosque.
Binyam told me that the most depressing moment of his whole experience in that awful torture in Morocco was when he figured out that the British government had to be feeding information to the Moroccans.
So what's wrong with that? Why is that such a bad thing?
There's nothing necessarily wrong with different governments sharing intelligence, as long as they're not sharing intelligence that results in the false incarceration of innocent people, and certainly as long as those governments are not implicated in torturing people.
All this was put to the then Foreign Secretary Jack Straw. Were British intelligence agencies complicit in the CIA's rendition of Binyam Mohammed al-Habashi?
Mr al-Habashi was interviewed once by a member of the Security Service, UK Security Service, while he was in detention in Karachi in 2002. The Security Service had no role in his capture or in his transfer from Pakistan.
It doesn't answer the question, was Mr Habashi handed over deliberately by the British intelligence services to the CIA?
The service had no role in his capture or transfer from Pakistan.
Right. That's a different question.
I don't think it is. It's the same answer.
Well, can you just clarify it?
Sorry.
No role in his transfer to Pakistan.
From Pakistan.
From Pakistan.
It's what you asked.
No, I'm sorry. The allegation is that he was handed over to the CIA in Pakistan.
I know nothing about being handed over to the CIA in Pakistan.
Could you clarify that in a further letter to the Commission, please?
I may or may not is the answer, because I think that basically these are matters for investigation by the ISC.
The ISC, the Intelligence and Security Committee, meets in secret, and its findings may never be published. Its report on rendition acknowledges mistakes, but what may never come out is its fury at the Bush administration for compromising British agents and damaging genuine anti-terrorist cooperation between allies. That too is the view of the former head of the CIA in Europe. He says it's one of the reasons he resigned.
One, it affects the willingness of other countries to work with us, of the intelligence services and police forces of other countries to work with us. Two, it makes it difficult, even if those countries do want to help us, it then makes it very difficult for them to help us because there's all this bad publicity and they're at risk of violating their own laws and that sort of thing. But I can tell you that I don't believe that intelligence collected under that type of situation is reliable. You can't depend on that.
That's now the dilemma for Europe's courts, whether to accept evidence that could be tainted by torture.
There's not a single court in Europe that can use that evidence to convict someone. So it's not just immoral, not just illegal, it's ineffective.
Today, the so-called dirty bomber, Jose Padilla, is on trial in a Miami court. But there's no mention of the radioactive bomb plot, apparently foiled with such aplomb. He's now charged with assisting terrorism, and after 5 years in custody, he's pleading insanity. Meanwhile, his supposed accomplice, the British resident from Kensal Rise, Binyam Mohammed, is still in Guantanamo on no charge.
Well, no one claims that Padilla was involved in the dirty bomb plot in New York, but the military is still saying that Binyam was. So, you got the first man, Padilla, and they've dismissed the charges against him, but the supposed second man, which incidentally I'm convinced is total nonsense, Binyam Mohammed, they've still got the allegations against him.
Government lobbying is what freed the Australian prisoner in Guantanamo, David Hicks. So too with British resident Bishar al-Rawi after evidence was revealed of his links with MI5. But the British government's washed its hands of Binyam Mohammed. He's not a British citizen, just a resident, and in their words to him, he's a nobody.
He'll rot in Guantanamo for some years to come, I suspect, unless he gets the sort of political support he needs from the British government to get him out of there.
Clive Stafford Smith will now have to fight to see his client. Guantanamo's new military commissions are trying to stop contact with civilian lawyers. These military commissions are where Majid Khan too is heading. The fun-loving kid from Baltimore is still in Guantanamo, still classed as a top Al-Qaeda suspect, and still refused access to his civilian lawyer. He too will be tried in secret, with no press, no public, no family allowed. No one can know if Majid Khan is innocent or guilty. A fair trial is all his family asks.
I would like to see my brother. I would like an opportunity to talk to him. I would like an opportunity for our lawyers to be able to present a case and defend him and prove all the allegations are wrong. Give us a chance to prove all the allegations are wrong, because we believe it in our hearts that there is nothing true about anything being said about him.
There's another reason to hear what Majid Khan has to say, the same reason his testimony is classified. To find out where he and the other top Al-Qaeda suspects were held, to add that missing piece to the secret prison's jigsaw.
He may have been held in a facility in Poland. There is certainly a great deal of investigation and revelations coming out about that facility, and we'd like to know whether he was held there at any period of time.
Majid Khan and all the others who may have been held in Poland grow increasingly more isolated as the US tries to prevent that secret coming out.
I'm not saying that they're innocent, but this issue has to be clarified. If there were prisons here, if people were held in Poland, then our government should admit it.
It's unlikely, unfortunately, that the British government, the European governments, the American government are going to agree to the truth coming out. And if they don't, I can promise you one thing, we're going to sue them into the next generation to make sure the truth ultimately comes out.
Not a single one of my clients has seen their day in court.
In the land of the Twin Towers, it hasn't been easy for American civil rights lawyers to garner sympathy for faceless Muslims in Guantanamo, but the mood is changing. Donald Rumsfeld, the hawkish former defense secretary who encouraged extreme interrogation techniques, may one day face arrest if he travels to Europe, to Germany or Spain.
The Center for Constitutional Rights brought a request for a criminal complaint in Germany because the actions of Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld and other U.S. officials constitute war crimes and they need to be held accountable.
You believe Rumsfeld is guilty of war crimes?
Yes. That the interrogation tactics that were used against my client unquestionably constituted torture and that those U.S. officials were aware of what they were authorizing at the time they signed those papers.
And that makes him a war criminal?
It does.
Ich glaube an die Gerichte in Amerika.
Another lawsuit, here in the CIA's backyard, Richmond, Virginia. Khaled El-Masri, the German car dealer, is suing too. He says he'll never give up.
Es geht mir einfach darum, ich will nur wissen, warum mir das angetan hat. Ich will eine Aufklärung und eine Entschuldigung.
They want an explanation for why it happened and an apology.
Well, then they should tell him.
But couldn't you tell him?
No. Because I'm legally constrained from telling him.
But you were in charge.
I can tell him that personally I had nothing to do with what happened to him. But I can tell him that...
How can you not have had anything to do with what happened? You were in charge of the CIA at that time.
I can't comment on that. It's a much more complicated issue than you know, and I wish I could tell you, but I can't, and I really can't.
Okay, but why?
Because I don't want to end up in court myself, is the thing. Yeah.
Khaled El-Masri has in the last few days been sentenced to a psychiatric hospital after setting fire to a shopping mall. He suffered a complete breakdown. In Washington, Democrats are now the majority in Congress. They're asking questions. CIA memoirs are piling up, heavily censored, each with their own versions of this curious time, with some bracing themselves for the days of reckoning to come.
It's a mess, and it's going to get worse. A lot of things were done after 9/11 that are going to be looked at for years to come. They're going to be commissions, court cases. These fellows that are at Guantanamo, they're going to have lawyers.
What about you? I mean, you were the boss in Europe. Where does it leave you?
I haven't been, no warrants out for my arrest. No, none for my arrest.
Not yet?
Not yet, anyway, no.
Are you worried?
No.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
So where does the buck stop?
The President's the President. I blame the administration for creating an atmosphere of sort of rage and vengeance. The people up the line need to have responsibility for what happened. They wanted to draw a line so that there was no direct line from what happened to their authority, and that's not right.
Deniability.
Deniability. Let's put it in plain English, yeah.
Today, CIA jets no longer land in Mallorca.
They stopped coming to Europe because of our constant communications through our networks. We reported it every time a new aeroplane landed, and there were about 16 suspect CIA planes. So they've stopped coming here. We reckon it's because they're going to Morocco or Algeria. We don't know where.
To Ethiopia, say the latest reports. And, it's rumoured, to a new CIA prison in the deserts of Morocco. The US has raised its aid to Morocco 8-fold. Renditions haven't stopped, they've just been relocated.
As more high-ranking terrorists are captured, the need to obtain intelligence from them will remain critical. And having a CIA program for questioning terrorists will continue to be crucial to getting life-saving information.
Human rights organizations have identified 20 rendered prisoners who've disappeared. They're asking where they are.
It'll come around in the end. It's you know, we have a way of getting around to this, and then it'll be a lot clearer. I won't look like quite the gangster I do with you today. So that's